Welcome back to the Your Golf Performance podcast. We're joined today with probably a legend in golf coaching instruction. He probably won't like me saying that, but Mr. Pete Cowen. He's been there, done that. There'll be many coaches tuning into this that are, very envious of what he's done over the last 50 to 60 years as a golf coach. Pete, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and have a chat.
No, thanks, Brent. Thanks for having me. I don't do many of these, so if I'm very amateurish at it, you'll understand why, because I don't do.
I feel extremely blessed, and while I'm here, I will say thank you to Steve and Dean for helping set this up. So, shout out, Steve. Pete, do you want to just give us? You were a professional. You played on the European Tour. Do you just want to give us a little bit of an insight into what your playing career was like back in the day before we get into how you've transformed many touring pros currently?
Pretty simple, really. I became assistant at a golf club when I was 16. I wasn't very good. I played a tournament in my first month that I was there. I shot 109, 100 around my own course, so that didn't go down too well. And then 6 months later, I played in my second tournament and shot a couple of rounds in the 70s. So I'd improved a fair bit in the 6 months and understood why I'd got to work really hard. And I used to hit 1,000 balls a day, which was far too many. And looking back at that, that's what injured me. So I look back at the mistakes that I've made, and I wouldn't make them now. So hitting 1,000 balls a day, it might give you a mental strength, but really it doesn't do your physical strength much and your body much, because I injured myself badly through poor technique, and I was out of the game for 2 years. But it was a fairly quick rise onto the European Tour. I started at 16 as an assistant pro, and by the time I was 19, I was playing in the Brazilian Open with Gary Player, who was probably one of the best players in the world at the time in the early 70s. And then progressed from there. And then, unfortunately, as I said, I was out of the game for 2 years with an injury. So I had to look at technique and why I got injured, and it was poor technique that I got injured. So I had to look at that in the 2 years I was out. Came back with, different ideas on the golf swing, always interested in technique. And so I progressed from there, trying to improve my technique. I played 8 Opens with limited, no real success. 33rd, I think, was the best day I played in the Open at Lytham when Seve won. That was an interesting week, knowing that I finished 33rd in the Open and still lost money on the week. And that was in the 70s, 1979. And that same year, I finished 54th in the Order of Merit and lost money on the year. So that's when I decided enough was enough. And I took a club pro job then. But I was always interested in technique. And just before that, we're talking about coaching. Everybody thinks that coaching is fairly expensive at the moment. But in 1978, I went to America to a guy called Gardner Dickinson, who was Ben Hogan's protege. And I had 10 lessons off Gardner Dickinson for over a 2-week period. And it was $200 an hour then.
You're kidding.
1978.
That would have been, what were you earning a week, like as an assistant pro in the 70s?
Nothing. Yeah, it was. I paid $2,000 over a 2-week period. But one thing that happened, I was really trying to get in touch with Ben Hogan because he was, the big hero of mine, him and Gary Player. And I asked Gardner Dickinson if he could ring Mr. Hogan and ask him if I could go and practice. And at that time in 78, Hogan would have only been 66, so he would have still been hitting balls pretty well. And of course, Dickinson said to me, well, if I were you, I'd stay here and watch Jack Nicklaus hit balls, because at that time, Nicklaus was the best player in the world. And he said I could ring Ben Hogan up, and he said, yeah, send him across to Fort Worth. And and then tomorrow you get there and you've flown all the way, and he might turn around and he said, no, not today, mate. So,
oh, really?
Said, so I said, well, all right, I'll sit and watch Nicklaus be taught by Jack Grout for 2 weeks. But I still wish I'd have gone. It would have been a better story if I'd have gone to watch Ben Hogan and he'd have turned around to me and said, F off. That was
not today.
Story. So I watched Nicklaus be taught by Grout for 2 weeks. And then, as I say, after that, in 79, I did okay, but there was no money in it. So I decided to take a club job. And I was really interested in technique, and then from there on in, I, tried to search out a few coaches John Jacobs particularly being one at that time. John Jacobs was probably the big name in Europe at the time. It was interesting because John's philosophy was very simple. On the backswing, you open the door, and on the downswing, you close the door. And as simple as that, and he's still that same philosophy. So I looked into that and thought, well, there's a little bit of that in it, and that requires so much timing that, maybe it's not the way forward. So I looked into it a little bit more. And over the years, in the 70s, in the 80s, I started coaching decent players, and still playing decent golf myself as a club pro. But I was really progressing into technique, and I started understanding more about. And it wasn't until I did work with Ramsey and Ryan Lumsden on the physicality of the golf swing, how the muscle structure works and everything like that, that I really started understanding what we needed to do to get better. But the game's still about matching movements, unfortunately. And so we look at, what people have got. And some people do open the club on the backswing and close it on the through swing and still play great golf. But you've got to remember that the best players in the world are still the best manipulators.
Yes.
They're not the best technical players. They're the best manipulators. So that's what you've got to look at. And I say to players, look, if you are a great manipulator on the golf course, why are you practicing technique? You should be practicing manipulation. So it doesn't cross over very well. And if you're, a technical person that plays technique on the golf course, then maybe you should practice technique. So again, it's down to the individual, but it's still matching movements.
It's so true. Like, I've been saying this even with some kids that come through my academy, where their technique to if you put it up on social media, people would be like, oh, that's a horrible technique. But they're a competitor and they know how to score. And then you have other kids that swing it like Adam Scott and they shoot 85. And it goes down to what you're just saying there, where they're the best manipulators, right? They figure out a way to be able to get the ball where it needs to go.
Absolutely. And, that's why, when I started teaching Lee Westwood in the mid-90s, Lee had a 17-degree bend in his left lead arm.
Yep.
So it was pretty easy that he couldn't hook the ball.
Yeah.
So we just took the left side of the course out, and then he became the best driver of a golf ball over the last 25, 30 years, did Lee Westwood, because he had a natural advantage over everybody else in that he couldn't. And I can remember people saying to me, coaches, why don't you get Lee to straighten his left arm? I said, oh yeah, and break it in two places to get it straight. It's natural. And it was a bit like a guy called Calvin Pete years ago was the straightest guy, and he'd broken his arm in a fall, and it was locked in. So, he basically couldn't manipulate the club face well enough to draw the ball, so it was just straight to left or right. So you look at that, and what advantages players have got.
Can you remember the first significant win of a tour player that you sort of had helped?
It was Lee, straight away. Lee in 95, 96. Lee, for the next 5 years, Lee won 25 tournaments. From starting work with him, he won 25 tournaments, and he was just, he was like the Tiger Woods of Europe at the time, because when he came up on the leaderboard, everybody else was backstroking and saying, "Oh well, if Lee's up there, he's going to win." It was So the reason he won is because we took the left side out of the course, and he could be more aggressive. Because when we started working, he was short and wild because he didn't understand his strengths.
We're welcoming a new partner to the Your Golf Performance podcast. This will be a performance analytics partner, Circles, or Draw More Circles as you may know them, the ultimate tool for tracking your golf progress. Whether you're a junior golfer, college player or coach, the everyday club golfer, or a golf professional, Draw More Circles allows you to easily track and analyze your performance like never before. With their innovative performance analytics, you'll get insights into your game that go far beyond just the scorecard. From strokes gain metrics to detailed reports on every aspect of your play, you can pinpoint exactly where to focus your practice to improve faster. One of the best features that I've found with Circles is the course management tool, which will take your physical data to help you navigate around the course smarter. They're actually taking your stats that you've entered into the system and helping you strategically play a better game of golf. Plus, it's perfect for coaches who want to keep track of their players' development and offer data-driven advice. If you can't measure it, you're guessing. The best part is that as you are one of my listeners, you'll get exclusive access to their services through our partnership. These prices are too hot to mention, and I'll need you to email me. My email address is brentdalegolf@gmail.com, or feel free to message me on Instagram at brentdalegolf. We welcome Circles to the team.
Now, you made mention before about being really interested in technique. A young kid these days who's interested in technique could find 8 billion articles on the internet. Did you do a lot of, I guess they call it shadowing now, just going and watching people or watching good coaches hit balls? Were you in the library reading as much as you could? What were you doing?
I did. I mean, funny enough, you talk about that. Last year, I gave 4,000 golf books away.
4,000.
Yeah, 4,000. Yeah.
Wow.
So I got one of the old caddies, David Musgrove, who caddied for Seve when he won a few times, and all great players. He amassed a books over years. He amassed thousands and thousands of books, and I'd got thousands of books. So, when he died, unfortunately, I inherited his books, and I'd got far too many, and so I started sifting them out, and as I said, I eventually gave away 4,000 books. Eventually, I've still got a few decent ones, but only the ones that I think are relevant.
Well, just for the younger listeners, what would some of those books be that you sort of live by?
Really the old ones, Modern Fundamentals, Hogan, which you would read, all those, Swing the Club Head, and I said I haven't read it, but I could write down probably 50 that are really, worth reading. But again, I try to read everything really, and it didn't do me an awful lot of good because a lot of it is confusing, and that's why I came up with, the simple stuff. And I would still say my Hogan's Modern Fundamentals is still the one I read more than anything else. But even that's misleading, So I would say, like every great player, they write down what they felt they did, not what they actually did.
Yeah, right.
So they're all very interesting, really. But if I was looking to improve my golf, I'd still be looking improve the physiology of my body rather than the technique. The technique of the golf swing is pretty simple. What is it? You've got to start the ball on the line with the correct flight and the correct spin, and then get your distance control right. And when you can do all those 4 things with whatever technique you've got, go and play.
Yeah.
Keep it as simple as that. Because as you said earlier, there are kids that are just brilliant at manipulating it, and you can't teach that manipulation because it's more to do with timing. But they know exactly where, they know from what they've done exactly where the club head is relative to the shot they're trying to play. So there's only one common denominator I've seen with all the players, the top players, when they're playing the best. There's only one common denominator I've seen, and that is that they all get it in the correct delivery position. Delivery, not impact. The delivery position relative to the shot they're trying to play.
Yeah.
So if they're trying to hit a fade, they've got it in the position early, and the same with the draw. And they're all the same. When they're playing at the best, their delivery position is always correct relative to the shot they're trying to play. So there's no double cross. So the only poor shot in golf really is a double cross.
Yeah.
That's the only shot you can't really control.
If a tour player called you and said, Pete, I need some help, how does the process work? Would you sit there and watch their videos or, watch go onto YouTube or like. I guess what I'm getting at is for the club pros or the teachers like myself that give 6 to 8 lessons a day or whatever, and you've got a different person coming in every hour, and you've got that first couple of minutes to figure out what's wrong and work on it with them. When you've got someone that's high profile that picks up the phone, are you doing a truckload of research before you sit there and actually have a session with them?
I do a fair bit of research, but then I have to talk through the player, what he thinks his strengths and his weaknesses are, and it's the old saying: don't strengthen your weaknesses and weaken your strengths. So you've got to look at what their strengths are, and sometimes it is that they're in a funky position, but it is the same every time. So you say, well, you can only build consistency with constants. So what are the constants you want? So you would ask a player, what constants do you want in the golf swing? And I always say my first question is, what shot would you hit if your life depended on it? Would it be fair? Would it be draw? What would it be? What would you do if your life depended on it? And they sometimes don't know the strengths. So, sometimes it's just going out and getting them to hit shots to a particular target and say, right, hit me 50 draws to that target, hit me 50 fades, and let's see which your real strength is. But again, in practice, it's pretty easy. It's what on the golf course that matters.
Yeah, correct. What if their strength is the shape that they don't like?
You've got to be really, really strong with them.
Yeah, okay.
That's what you've got to do. You've got to be really strong with them and say, no, you're actually going to go down. And I always say, look, in the game of golf, there's light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel might be, you've set yourself a target. I'm going to get on the tour within 5 years. So you've got a 5-year tunnel, if you like. This is what I say. And I said, when you actually look at it, if you go down that tunnel, there is light at the end of it, so long as you don't all of a sudden veer off and think there's a magic cure. And do you remember, I've been down that tunnel and I've gone off it, and 6 months later, I'm still down that offshoot of the tunnel, and I've got to turn around and come back. Yeah. And then I go down another blind alley and come back. So I remember I've been down all the blind alleys that players go down, and I will say, well, I wouldn't do that because I've been down that alley. And there's no light down that. There's no light down there. You've got to really see what your strengths are, and those strengths will still be there at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Do you remember your first major championship win as a coach?
Yeah, it was, and a lot of players, and this is coaches as well. A lot of coaches think that you give players good golf lessons to win majors. I've given more bollockins to players to win majors than ever given them a good golf lesson or talked them down off the ledge because they were in a bad place mentally. But my first major that was Graham McDowell at Pebble Beach, 2010. Yeah. And I remember the first round, Graham came off and he'd shot a decent first round. And I said, well, it's a pity, you just left a couple out there. And his response to that was really whipped round to me. And he turned round to me and he says, I don't care. I've got a big one in me, And oh, all right, yeah. Well, so prove it to me. And by the end of the week, he was US Open champion.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
And so with players, I think it's more to do with how they're brought up, not getting stage fright. So when you're asking me about juniors, I look at youngsters that want to come out in front of their peers and say, yeah, I can do that, even though if they fail. You want to look at that kid. He's not frightened. He's not got stage fright. And the player that I had with the least amount of stage fright is Matt Fitzpatrick.
Yeah,
he never, from being a 12-year-old, never got stage fright at any level, whatever level he was up there. Never, ever, and still doesn't get stage fright.
So I've referenced it on this pod a bit.
That's something that everybody misses. You're looking at players and you say, well, yeah, he's a great swinger, like you said earlier. He's a great swinger, but he's not performing on the course because he's embarrassed about himself on the golf course. He thinks that, a bit like me and Stenson to a certain, we only think we can win hitting the ball perfect.
Yeah.
And that's why Henrik didn't win as much as though he won all the great tournaments, did Henrik, and had a great career and got to number 2 in the world. But Henrik never thought he could win a golf tournament playing average. And they all play average when they win. They don't play great.
Yeah. Did you ever used to just get him?
But then he did play the best golf of his life to win the Open against Mickelson. So he's probably proving me wrong there.
Do you ever get a massive headache some weeks where players are just into you, like I'm hitting it poorly or whatever, and you're kind of like, well, you're hitting it good enough to go and win? Did you ever have that going through your mind?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, you've got to be strong with the players, really, and you've got to be true to your beliefs. That's what you've got to do. What players are doing, they're challenging you to go off track. They're challenging and saying, "Oh, magic move of the month. Give me magic move of the month." No, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not your man. If you want magic move of the month, yeah, I can talk you through a magic move in your mind, but not in your golf swing. So let's get the magic move of the month in your mind and not in your golf swing. Because when they can hit the ball, it's definitely down to 90% mental. No doubt.
Well, and I've said this on the pod before, there are people that want the ball. So if you're thinking about football or rugby league, there's always a certain player on the field with 20 seconds to go and they need to score a try or kick a goal. There are players that want it and there are players that run away from that. They don't want the, like you said, stage fright. And I don't think you walk up and down the range at a tour event, everyone hits it good enough to win.
Oh yeah.
But it's the ones that just, one of my questions, right? And I'll see if you can throw an answer in here. Like, there's no better person to answer this than you, but you look at a tour event every week, there are your Rory McIlroys, your Scotty Schefflers, the guys that are competing week in, week out for a trophy. And then, there's 50 odd or 60 odd people in the field every week that are struggling to make the cut. What do you see the difference is? I pretty much know what the answer is going to be, but the difference between those guys that are going to pretty much win every time they peg it up versus the guys that struggle to keep their cards.
I think you're probably missing a point there, because what I've said earlier is the best players in the world are the best manipulators. Right. So what I mean by that, if Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy and people like Brooks who've won multiple majors, if they were jugglers, they could juggle 20 balls. They're that good. Their hand-eye coordination, their manipulation is that good. They could juggle 20 balls. The average tour player can only juggle 15.
Yeah.
Right? They're still brilliant, but they can't get... So how are you going to close that gap? Very, very difficult. But what can happen sometimes is you get a Scheffler and a McIlroy and a Brooks not quite juggling 20 balls on that day. They're juggling 17 or 18. And then all of a sudden, the guy that's juggling 15 balls, he's putting well, his short game's great, and they're getting closer together. So on some days, they can actually beat them.
I love
but
that
on
answer.
most days, they can't. It's as simple as...
Hey, listeners, I just wanted to give a big shout out to one of our amazing partners, True Protein. They've been with me for a while now, and honestly, I can't speak highly enough about them. For years, I struggled to find a protein powder that didn't make me feel sick. Most brands would often make my stomach feel upset, and I'd just truly given up. But ever since I started using True Protein, it's completely changed. Their products make me feel great. I've never had that heavy or queasy feeling I used to get with the other brands. I'm absolutely obsessed with the choc peanut butter flavor that I've been putting in my protein shakes with a banana and some ice and some almond milk. Absolute game changer. It's become my pretty much everyday go-to. And also the other thing that I'm sort of having probably too often is their collagen hot chocolate. Every morning, I just mix it in with some hot water and it's like 12 grams of protein for about 80 calories. So you can't go wrong. Plus their protein bars are perfect for snacking on the course or during lessons. They keep me fueled without the crash. True Protein is an Aussie-made brand that uses clean, high-quality ingredients with no weird fillers or artificial junk. That's a huge deal for me because those fake sweeteners is what I've always struggled with, and they've all set me off. So with our partnership, you can get a $25 off your first order as a new customer. Just use the code TRUEYGP at checkout. That's TRUEYGP. I'm proud to partner with True Protein because they've genuinely made a difference for me, and I know they'll do the same for you. Pete, do you ever get nervous when your players are in contention? Do you ever feel the butterflies in the tummy?
I used to. I don't particularly now. I used to blame myself as a coach. I used to blame myself for every bogey that a player had.
Of course.
As a coach, it used to hit me right in the heart or in the stomach. It really was because, a lot of the time, and it's not your fault. You make a small percentage, difference to these players. That's all. But that small percentage difference can make them become great players. But as I just said to you earlier, I've taught the players down off the ledge to win tournaments much more than I've ever given a good golf lesson. The classic one was Darren Clark in 2011 when he won St. George's. Right. So on the week before, we're playing the Scottish Open up near Inverness. And Darren was playing unbelievably well, and he was leading the tournament. And it got cut to 54 holes, but he was leading the tournament. So on the Sunday, he's playing with two of his biggest competitors, Montgomery and Westwood. And he was going to go out and show them, I'll show them how to win this tournament. He played horrendously. And, of course, he didn't win. And then the Open was the next week at St. George's, and he went missing on the Monday totally. Couldn't see him. He went on the drink, didn't want to know, can't play the game, can't do this, can't. So on the Tuesday morning, I was on the range very, very early with one of his guys that from his management group, a guy called Ian Garber, who works for Callaway now, who used to play the tour. Well, Ian and me were on the range very early, probably 6:30 in the morning, and waiting for the players to come along because they do play early at practice rounds at an Open. But this was Tuesday, and we hadn't seen Clarkey on the Monday at all. So, of course, in the distance, we see this guy with his shoulders down, as though his dog's dead, walking towards us. And then the caddy 20 yards behind. And he was the only one there. So he came walking. He said, I said, "You all right, Darren?" "No, I'm effing not. I'm not. Can't play the game, can't put, wasting my time, might as well go home." And I'm looking at Garby, who was his private manager, and think, well, normally, if I'd got 3 or 4 players on the range, I would have just left and gone to the other players. But I'd only got him there. So I thought, well, it's down to me to talk him down off this ledge because 3 days earlier he was playing great, but it was that one bad day on the Sundays just destroyed him. So I stood and I talked him down off the ledge. And the one thing that I got through to him was the weather was going to be horrendous that week at St. George's. And I turned around to him, I said, "Clarkey," I said, "you're probably the best bad weather player in the world. So with the weather being as bad as it, well, how am I going to do that then?" So I said, "Well, we better just get all the shots in play that you can play in the bad weather. Low draw, low fade, high, whatever it was in this bad weather." And of course, 2 hours later, he's giving an exhibition of how to hit driver off the deck, drawing it, fading it. And so I said to him, "Are we all right now, Darren?" "No, I'm effing not because I still can't putt." So he went and played a practice round and he hit fairway, green, pick the ball up. Fairway, green, pick the ball up. Wouldn't putt. So then eventually I said, well, eventually you've got to, start putting. And so I called Rotella in because I knew it was more mental than anything else. Bob Rotella gave him, a chat. I'd given him the chat. And all of a sudden he became the calmest bloke in the week. And that was it. And it was more to do with talking him down off the ledge than ever giving him a good golf lesson. And I've done that with Brooks when he won Herring Hills. I had to talk him down off the ledge because his attitude was appalling that week before, and I talked to him. When he won Herring Hills, and so there's nothing. And they did it with Stenson in 16, 2 weeks before he won there. I gave him 10-0. I gave him the talk that I said to Henrik 3 weeks before he won the Open at Troon. I said, I think I want success for you more than you want it for yourself. No, that's not true. I said, well, prove it to me. And that week he won in Germany, and then 3 weeks later he won the Open at Troon. So it was more to do with, that than technique. Nothing to do with technique. So it's understanding your players. That's what I'm saying to look. Yeah. So you've got to get in deep with the players, and that's why you've got to have them a while and understand the nuances and how they actually all work. Luckily, when you've got talented players, as a coach, it's pretty easy to put them on straight and narrow technically. But then again, mentally, it's hard. So I always say and I've been with more psychologists than anybody listening to them. And I always said to the psychologists, well, the unfortunate thing is you can't do your job if I don't do mine. You get a guy on the range that's hitting it all over the players, and the psychologist comes along and said, think positive on the first tee. You say, oh, yeah, good luck with that one.
Yeah.
I've been there, done that. And the most positive, I read all those self-help books and, power. And the one book I read as a player was The Power of Positive Thinking by a guy called Norman Vincent Peale.
Yeah.
He's still out there, the book. Well, he was very positive because he committed suicide. He did.
Oh, you kidding?
Oh, there is a power of positive thinking there. But I said, well, that's a little bit extreme, but that was
out. Look, obviously, is there a certain victory that I guess the most emotional or personally satisfying for you?
Yeah, well, it was obviously Henrik in 16 when he won the Troon, because it was a culmination of 15 years hard work. That because we had to rebuild it. That was the biggest job I'd done. I had to rebuild his swing in 2001, 2002, and he nearly packed up in 2003-4 because it was, he wasn't getting it. Then all of a sudden it just clicked. It all started working. And then from then on, he had an unbelievable career. And without, a couple of his friends, rooking him with financially, he would have had, an unbelievable, even better career. But he's had a great.
We kind of answered this already, but do you have a technical non-negotiable? This question came in from one of the coaches that tunes in a bit. Obviously, I'll let you answer it. Go.
I think having control of the club face, understanding how you control the club face. So I always say to players, right, if we've got a stable club face all the way through, I only need to worry about the path.
Yeah.
So have I got a stable club face? It could be stably open. It could be stably closed. It could be, stably square. And that has got to match what their intentions of the shots are. So I always say to players, right, how do we stabilize the club face? And very few of the players know. And of course, all it is, I said, right, think about that logically. And this would be my non-negotiable. Right, if I'm putting, I've got one hand facing the other hand, and the pressure's equal. So what happens to the face as I'm going back? If the pressure's equal, there's no face rotation, face close. So it's always consistent. That's an equal and opposite. So it is basically, laws of physics, equal and opposite. So if I've got a golf swing and I've got equal and opposite in my grip against the grip of the golf club, so I'm and I call it the towel drill. So you actually squeeze the towel in opposition. So your fingers are going in opposition. And what happens to the club face? So if I can maintain that equal and opposite all the way through the swing, you've got a stable face.
Yeah, okay.
It's finger pressure. So it's finger pressure. So there's three equal and opposites. There's equal and opposite pressure forward. There's equal and opposite. So there's equal and opposite this way. There's equal and opposite that way. And there's equal and opposite that way. So players play with different, equal, and opposite. So you've got to look at that and say, well, if the face is stable all the way through, I can almost make a poor movement and still hit a shot within my deviation pattern that's acceptable. But if the club face has got an awful lot of movement in it, then I can't do that. And of course, with a stable club face,
I've lost you, Pete.
Somebody was ringing there.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
With equal and opposite. So if you could stand in the most ridiculous. So I said to players, right, the hardest part as a pro is to change somebody's grip.
Yep.
And I said, right, for me, I wouldn't change the grip. If somebody's very strong, if they'd still use equal and opposite, they could still, but most people go strong and then get the club face opening, close, whatever it is. So I could go very strong, and provided I go equal and opposite, I could still hit a straight shot because the club face is stable with a strong grip.
Yeah, of course.
Or I've got weak, or I can go strong, weak. It's all those things. So I can work that through. So if I've got a stable face, then, the game is an awful lot easier.
How did you go coming from the coaching era with no technology? Like, I guess video cameras came in and all that, but now with your TrackMans and your Foresights and your Sam Putt Labs and all that sort of stuff, how have you incorporated that into your coaching over the years?
Well, funny enough you say that. Klaus, who part owner of TrackMan, came to me in 2003 or 4, and he showed me this gadget, TrackMan.
Yep.
And he said, I want you to have a look at this and tell me what you think. So when he showed me, I said, well, the one thing you have done for me is prove that the ball flight laws were wrong. I'd been saying the ball flight laws were wrong for years.
Yeah.
And I said, no, your ball flight laws are wrong, because I know as a player I can do X, Y, Z, did it. And I said, what you've done as a company is prove that the ball flight laws are wrong. And so all of a sudden, I'll accept that. So I was one of the first that got TrackMan out there with Clarkey and a few others, because Darren wanted the latest gadget. So he always bought the latest gadget.
He's a bad tinkerer, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. Darren, unbelievable. Yeah. Darren is the most unbelievable. He still thinks he's going to win the Open sometime soon.
Spiral staircase.
Yeah, well, that was because Ramsey and Ryan Lumsden, we got together. But I'd done that years before we met them. And I'd said, there's a way. That was, for me, getting rid of my slip disc, which I got, the slip disc, and was injured out for 2 years. I started studying what, the best way of the body to move with power. And then from studying that, the best way everything moves is spirally. Everything. Yeah. You look and you put it into that AI now, whatever it is, and you ask the question, what is the best way to move? It's spirally.
Yeah.
So you never, and if you move spirally, you're not going to injure yourself, because there's three movements in the golf swing that, to simplify it, there's the up and down and the lateral and rotation. But one of them's got to be in charge, and it's got to be the up and down, because it happens before the lateral and rotation. So if you can spiral up and spiral down, it gives you the lateral and rotation free.
Your golf ball is the most technologically advanced, or it's not. Your golf ball is either the most consistent, or it's not. It's the most trusted, or it's not. The fact is, it's either Titleist, the best performing golf ball in the world, or it's not. Prove it for yourself. Titleist, the #1 ball in golf. What will you play?
And you know what? It's funny. If I have half a day of coaching and I'm showing people what they're doing wrong in their golf swing, it's amazing how much my lower back hurts at the end of the day, where you're just doing some slight demos of, you're tilting back here too much and you're doing this, and getting them to, I think what that, obviously seen that 17 years ago, I think it was, you come to Australia and you spoke about it then. It was like ankles over shin, it was like this great and I was young back then, but the more and more I coached, I started to go, oh, that makes so much sense, the way you can just get people to load and then, I guess, unload.
Well, I said the hardest part is for people to understand how the body works in the golf swing. So
Yeah.
I get them to stand there with the feet together and say, how would you go from your feet and spiral up like a spring up to you, all the way up to your body, and then just slightly compress down and move the other way? So that's basically what you're trying to achieve. Winding up like the spring, which is the spiral, and then compressing down and moving. So that's the simplest. So I always say 99% of amateurs would be much better golfers hitting balls with the feet together.
And it's so true.
Because there's a constant in there then. You're taking one of the massive variables out of it. And then it should be easy for you to teach them how to get the shoulder muscles and their arms and clubs into a decent position to deliver the blow with a simple body movement.
Yeah.
The body's the biggest golf swing.
Yeah. How does your, I guess, coaching approach differ between like a top tour pro? And you've obviously spent a lot of time with like national teams and high level juniors. What sort of stuff are you trying to instill in those kids at 14, 15, 16?
Well, I'm trying to instill a consistent body action. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be consistent. So if I got 10 kids to do the spiral movement, they'd all do it slightly differently, but the process would be pretty similar. Yeah, because of the muscle strength and everything comes into it. But I said, well, if you could do this correctly, time and time again, and forget how the body works in the golf swing, because I can see all the players thinking about, and I know as a coach, thinking about how the body works during the process of hitting a ball.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to get a bit more lateral, haven't I? I've got to rotate a bit more. I've got to turn a bit more. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I said, that should be in there. That should be a non-negotiable, a consistent body action that never breaks down. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be consistent.
You would have dealt with some parents over the years that have been, I guess, difficult to, maybe they've hurt their children's playing career or whatnot. What sort of advice could you give? There might be a few parents that are tuning in right now. What sort of advice could you give to the parent of a high level junior that they suspect is going to make it on tour one day?
Well, I would say to the parents, right? I want your child to have the 3 R's, right? First R is they've got to respect themselves, and that shows in their attitude, how they perform. They've got to respect themselves. They've not got to disrespect themselves. They've got to respect themselves. So that's the first R. Then they've got to respect the people that help them. Might be the coach, might be the parents, could be sponsor. But they've got to respect those people. But the third R, which is probably the most important, they've got to be responsible for their own actions. So they've got to respect themselves, respect others, but they've also got to be responsible for their own actions. It's not always somebody else's fault, right? We're doing our best as coaches, and that's what you've got to say to the player. Look, the thing that I say to players, right, the worst thing you do as a coach is to say to a parent who's brought a really good player along to you and say, right, he's a really good player, we'd like to move him along. What are you going to do to it, for him? And then the first thing the coach does makes the mistake of said, well, I'm going to change his grip a bit. I'm going to change his backswing a bit. I'm going to change his... Change is a negative connotation.
Yep.
What you say is, we're going to improve this little bit, we're going to improve that a little bit, and we're going to improve that a little bit. Improve is the positive, change is the negative. And that's, the key. And with parents, what we want is we want the parents to encourage the child, not to destroy them.
Yeah.
Encourage them, take them anywhere, everywhere, do whatever I want with them, but try and encourage them. And I want a parent that's going to encourage the kids to do the right things. I respect himself for a start. So if I've got a kid that's coming along and I can see he doesn't respect himself on the golf course with his attitude and everything, I always then said to the parent, That's your fault.
You know, the one kid that comes to mind that having the 3 Rs would be Matt Fitzpatrick. Is that pretty spot on? His parents just look lovely. He
Well,
looks,
his dad was my bank manager. That's how it all came about. His dad was my bank manager.
yeah, right.
So
There you go.
that's how that came about. He brought him when he was 12, and obviously, his dad's a nice bloke, and he's a lovely family. And then Alex came along later. He's about 3 years younger than Matt, so they all came along. They came to the range here where I am now, and he's become a great player, and he's now got I think he's got Blackburn coaching him at the moment. But you can't, yourself as a good coach, trying to change somebody's swing that's been imprinted is very, very difficult. And that's why I say you've got to improve movements.
Yeah.
Change is... So with a lot of players that come along, they've got everything, the basic, and then you say, I've just got to nip that bit in the bud. I've got to nip that in the bud and just make sure we understand. But it's the attitude, their attitude towards you as a coach that's really, really important. So you've got, as a coach, you've got to get their respect by not being magic move of the month coach and say, no, this is what we're doing.
Stick to the plan.
Stick to the plan.
Yeah.
If you believe in yourself as a coach, that's what you'll do. And that's what I always do. Look, no, I'm not having it, and we'd argue. And the players want you to change your mind to please them. So that's when you've got to be at your strongest and said, no, it's not. That's not how you do it. And that's not how you perform at your best.
It would take a strong-willed person, because no doubt if a young coach is at a tour event and the tour player's saying, fix this or fix that or whatever, they're going to give in. But Pete Cowen's made his mind up, and you've made your mind up with what the issue is that you need to improve, and it's a long-term plan, not just a short-term sort of
well, what you've got
fad.
to do, if you're going to do that as a coach going on to, you've got to leave them totally playable while you're making those slight improvements. Slight improvements. That's the hard part. So they've got to see some result somewhere. And that's what I was saying about Stenson. That was the hardest part, because that was a total rebuild and it was 2 years of no results. But he was strong enough mentally to say, no, I agree with you. This is definitely, because the other wasn't good enough. So I know that I had to do this to actually become the player that I wanted to be. But that takes a mental strength for the player, as well as we don't always have players with that strong mentality. And like you said, some of them actually give in. But you've got to see a few results first.
Kind of happy with the way you worded a few of those things, because I've had a young kid that's started seeing me for some lessons the last month, and there's some stuff in his technique that I just don't like. But he's only like 10 years old, right? So what I did the first 3 or 4 sessions was just hardly change a thing, but made him feel like we made improvements so that I could build up trust. And then on like lesson 4, I sort of said, hey, I want to talk to you about this left elbow as we come in and we hit the shot. And I felt like, because I'd had 3 or 4 sessions with him and this kid turned around and started to like me, so to speak, and then built up the trust, it made the improvements, I won't say change, it made the improvements easier for him. Is that something that you would have done over time, or do you just go in and rip the Band-Aid off straight away?
Well, it depends what they're coming to you for. I mean, as a coach, more than 90% of your coaching is quick fix. As a coach, I built a reputation on quick fixes to start with. And that's why, you got your diary was full, because, he's the man for the quick fix. But I also had a development program in the background with 4 or 5 kids who all of a sudden started, winning everything. And then that's why then the pros started coming to me and they started winning everything. And that's how you build it up. So you've got to have a development program in your own mind. How you and you've got to find the right kids for that development program. And I gave kids 4 or 5 kids lessons for nothing for years to develop them.
Yep.
And it worked. And that's what I would say to some other coaches. Yeah, give everybody a quick fix it, but have your development program in the background. How are you going to develop this player? But I would say without that consistent body action, they're going to struggle under pressure.
Yeah. Yeah. How is it? Obviously, the way coaching's gone over the last couple of decades, you've got your specialists now, so your putting coaches and your short game coaches and your full swing coaches. Is there banter? Like, I'd imagine you handing one of your players over to, say, a Phil Kenyon to go and do some putting while you've warmed them up on the range. Is there ever a don't screw him up type thing? Or
well, what I say to all the putting coaches, I say, putting coach, what's one of those? What's a putting coach? I said, it's 12 inches back and 12 inches through. How can you get that wrong? So I do have a lot of banter with putting coaches, that's for sure. But they obviously they do mentally. To me, they do a great because it's like aim point. I did the 3 day. No, I did a full day with the original guy that did aim point donkeys years ago, and I did a full day with him. And at the end of it, I just said, well, there's too many variables on the green for that to actually work. I said, if you believe it works, it might help because it's a bit like the plumb bob. If you believe that works, but there's a lot of people that are a lot cleverer than me, and I asked the question: can this aim point work on greens as variable as? He said, no, it's impossible. But if you believe it works, then obviously, and then you can do the maths. And if the green was perfect and your percentages were perfect and your speed was perfect, fine. But we know that's putting in any case.
Yeah, that's right.
I always said I said to a lot of guys, I can hear when you've hit a great putt. I can hear when you've hit because I know so to me, it's the quality of strike of the putt that determines whether you're going to be a great putter or not. And I remember years ago, 2015, when Jordan Spieth was at his best. So when somebody, as a player, when you hit the putt perfectly, within a millisecond, if it's got a chance of going in by the noise and the feel back up the club. Yep. Millisecond, within a millisecond. Within a millisecond if it's going to miss.
Yeah.
So that's the quality of the noise and the sound. And I always say, when I used to go on the putting, and I don't do putting at all these days, but I used to do a bit of putting. In 2015, every time I walked on the putting green and I heard this certain noise, which was like somebody hitting a perfect pitch in music, I turned around. It was always Jordan Spieth. Always.
Yeah, right.
The noise that he hit this perfect putt.
When he was at his peak.
At his peak. And then, because his stats then were just ridiculous. And then the next guy was Jason Day 2 or 3 years later. He was the same. I used to turn around and again the same noise. So it's the quality of the strike in putting that determines whether you're a great putter or not.
Yeah.
But you can't do distance control. It's a bit like hitting a drive off the toe or the heel. It's not going to go the same as hitting it out the middle. Same with an iron shot. Same with, your sand iron. You've got a certain noise when you hit a great sand shot. So it's the same with the putting. So I always believe it's the quality of strike that's everything. But it's the same with every golf shot, not just putting.
So you are taking the piss out of them when you hand your player over. Wait, what's your thoughts on the whole AI or the artificial intelligence now that's coming into golf and maybe where coaching might be 20 years from now?
AI is great because somebody sent me something from AI the other day. They said they didn't say who the best coach in the world. They said, who is the most successful coach in the last 15, 20 years? And it came up me. So I was saying, AI. I said, that's ridiculous. I said, well, at least it can be it's not an opinion.
Yeah, there you go. That's factual. We'll say that so AI is okay. You're giving it a thumbs up, Pete.
Oh dear. So I don't know where it's
Do you,
going there.
do you think it'll ever truly replace the elements of what an in-person coach could do, or a coach
No
like
chance.
yourself?
No chance.
Yeah, I agree.
It
I
can't
agree.
talk. It can't talk to the player like they should be talking to the player.
Yeah. Mate, before we wrap up, this has been amazing. I had 27 questions written out, and I feel like I've asked about 10 because you've answered them so well, and it's just felt like a good conversation. But there's a lot of big personal brands online these days. You know, this is a Stevie Dean one. Is there a reason why you kind of stayed away from the whole social media promotion?
Well, I'm not very good at technology, that's why.
Just so the listeners know, it took 10 minutes to get into this conversation tonight. I thought the podcast wasn't going to happen.
Oh dear.
So it was just purely it wasn't a conscious decision. You just didn't feel comfortable doing it.
Well, like today, you know, it's almost like, oh, I don't think I'm any good at that, so I don't think I'll do it. I never wanted to do anything that I wasn't any good at. So
is there anything you see online that you just like you're seeing trends that you shake your head at, like this is bullshit, all these tips that are coming out?
Yeah, but if there's an awful lot of it that's actually because, as I said to you, it should be an awful lot simpler, because as a coach, as you get older, you should make everything simpler, not more complicated.
Yeah.
It gets too complicated. And as I said, you know, can the player stand up there and think about certain things while they're hitting a golf ball? It's over in 1.3 seconds. I mean, what can you? That's why I said, if you can't get the club in the right delivery early enough, you're not going to hit a good shot.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
The moment of, the truth, the moment of impact is the truth. No, but that's a consequence of how it's got there. It is the moment of truth, but it's a consequence of how it's got there. So if you don't get it in the right delivery position with that millisecond between delivery and impact, you're not going to get it right.
Yeah. What was it like being around Tiger in the whole, with his boom? You would have obviously been at quite a few events. Did you have much time to do anything?
Yeah, because Westwood and Clark were very friendly with him in the mid-90s, 97, 98, 90. They were very friendly with him, and they played an awful lot of practice rounds with him. So I got to, see him at first hand, which was unbelievable. And we used to go out, for, a drink and what have you. But eventually it became madness. He couldn't go out with anybody because he just got mobbed. So, that was, basically after he won these Masters, the first time he won the Masters, after that it was, So I've always got on all right with him.
Is there anything that you learnt from him that just absolutely amazed you?
His work ethics.
Yeah. I've heard some crazy stories about him at
Isleworth. Just unbelievable, his work ethics. But also, you've got to look at somebody like Harrington, whose work ethics are as extreme as that, and they still are at 54, sorry, so you've got to look at young kids. And if I was looking at young kids, and I'd say, right, spend a day with Harrington, and after the end of the day, you're not, worn out. And he does that every day.
Yeah. But are you a fan of kids getting or players getting out on the golf course to do their practice, or become range rats and just hit balls all day?
On the course. On the course. I still like the best ball, worst ball. I still like the best ball, worst ball. That's still a great. And golf should be very simple, and a lot of people won't understand what I'm going to say here. But golf is all about making your next shot as easy as possible. Think about that. So your tee shot off the first tee is to make your second shot as easy as possible.
Yep.
Your second shot is to make your third shot as easy as possible. So they say you've got to stay in the moment. Yes, you have. But if you get into trouble, you've then got to make the shot that you're going to get out of trouble with as easy as possible. and then the shot so that's what I got on a golf course. That's what you do on a golf course. You learn how to score by putting yourself in a position. If I'm in a poor position, I've then got to put it in a position that's going to make it my next shot
easier.
And that's what Spieth did at his best. He never short-sided himself. He always
play aggressive to conservative lines. Play aggressive to conservative lines.
His next shot was as easy as he could possibly make.
Yeah,
that's what he did at his best.
Yeah,
and he put it unbelievably.
Mate, I could sit here for 3 weeks and just hear all your stories, but I'm sure you're a busy man, so I'll let you get back to it. I truly appreciate you taking the time to come on and have a bit of a chat about your coaching career and sharing a few cool stories.
All right, Brent. Nice to hear from you in any case.
All right.
And thanks.
Thanks.
Cheers.